Future Proof is sponsored by Equipping Young Adults for Life, inspiring student resilience, championing hope. Hello and welcome back from the break. You're watching Sarah Hopwood, these lovely series talking about future proofing, and in the first half, if you followed, I was talking with Andrew Wright, and he stayed with me in the studio from Action Your Potential, a relatively new business that actually specialises with education. Andrew was explaining in the first half that he's a former teacher with a huge interest in biology and the mind and terrific curiosity and further learning in that field. And thank you for staying with me, Andrew. It's really good to see you. Going into the break, we were talking about patterns of behaviour basically and anxiety, and I want to know more about it. I want to talk more about the emotional and the cognitive responses, but you just said to me, why don't you start with caveman thinking? Can you explain?
Yeah, absolutely. So the brain's been evolving for 5 million years, which is an impossible to imagine period of time. So crush that into a year and imagine a human evolution of the brain in a year. Basically nothing happens. We live in a group of 150 for about most of that year. Not until the 31st of December do our ancestors leave Africa, about 10 p.m. in the evening on the 31st of December. About 11 p.m. we build the pyramids and we start living in cities. We invent writing. Not until about 2 minutes to midnight as the last 200 years happened. And a couple of seconds ago we invented computers. So for the most of our brain's evolution, it's been living in a group of 150 on a very dangerous environment in the African savannah. So it's evolved to deal with that environment, and it does it in two ways. There's an emotional processing circuit about level with our ears in the middle of our brain, and at the front, going in about the length of a thumb, is our prefrontal cortex, our cognitive processing network, and they work together. So the emotional processing circuits get all sensory information first. So if a car comes bowling round the corner, your amygdala, deep in that emotional centre of your brain, will spot that and move you out of the way with a powerful fight, flight, freeze response. You'll feel the burst of adrenaline and you'll feel fear. Generally though, the amygdala is spotting change in the environment. So if someone frowns at you that you're not expecting, if someone fails to return a text that you're not expecting, that is also an urgent worry for the brain, because in the ancestral environment, if you fell out with your group of 150, you were toast. You weren't going to survive on your own on the African savannah. So getting on with your tribe was urgent survival.
I know you're going to continue, but can I just say there, but in our world now, so in that cultural world, you knew the culture of the tribe of 150. Now we have different cultural things. So where a frown in one culture can mean one thing, it can mean something completely different in another. We know there's studies already with different nationalities around the world around social distance. I'm not talking about pandemic social distancing, but some cultures like to be closer than others physically, and it can actually be seen aggressive if we stand too close. So it's different as well, isn't it, in these times compared to the tribes?
Exactly, and every tribe has its culture. What we're happening now is we're mixing across tribes. There's the 8 billion people continually mixing. Social media means that a lot of that communication is not clear. You're not getting the expressions necessarily or the nuance. But basically what happens is when the brain spots a change, a minor change, the emotional brain needs to get the cognitive architecture involved in coming up with a solution. So it sends out cognitive distortions, automatic negative thoughts. You will recognise these. These are catastrophizing thoughts. It's all going terribly wrong. Mind reading, those people don't like me. Assuming nothing good ever happens to me. Minimization, I only did well on that test because I was lucky. Those sorts of responses from the emotional brain are alerts to get the cognitive brain involved. But the danger is we get into a place where we believe those thoughts.
Yes, and I think many of us understand emotional and the emotional brains. Can you say what cognitive means, more about cognitive? Because that's often in response to an emotional...
Yeah, it almost always is. So basically, the emotions kick things off. They're very fast acting. They're often inaccurate, but they're very fast. They give us a general impression. Cognitive architecture at the front of the brain, which is our kind of superpower. It's grown very quickly in human brains over the last few million years. That is slower processing. It takes longer to wake up. It's basically associations. It's looking across the experiences that we've had and seeking solutions. It's solution-focused thinking. There are empathy circuits up there. There's a whole set of circuits that are looking for creative solutions.
Sorry, can I just interject there? So if we feed and nurture that, because whatever we focus on, we feed it and it gets stronger, that is tied up with Julian Rotter's internal locus control, the empathy, the suspension. Is that right?
No, exactly, and it's that architecture at the front of the brain. So one of those things I say to young people and parents where children are experiencing anxiety is the instinctive response is to curl up, not do the thing that you're worried about, hide away. Where we should go, the choice we should make is cake, to remember it like this, cake. Not to have a cake with a cup of tea, well that's quite nice, but cake means common humanity. Instead of saying, this isn't fair, this is awful, why is this happening to me? We should say, actually any brain in a new situation will experience these feelings. Common humanity turns on your empathy circuit. Awareness and acceptance, this is happening to me now and it's normal. It's normal for brains to spot problems by throwing cognitive distortions at them and generating a bit of anxiety because it's trying to work out what's going to happen. The next one, K, is kindly and curiously going in search of what triggered that feeling. Now that is a skill, it takes time, because initially you may not be able to work out what it was. Was it a thought about the future? It often is. Was it a reflection on something that's happened in the past? Was it someone that's just walked into the room? Whatever it is, you go in search of it. And E is empathy. You apply empathy to yourself the entire time. Because we often think to push ourselves hard, we need to be a hard taskmaster and have a go at ourselves, but actually the solution is self-compassion. When you are going to be growing and developing, you are going to be making buckets of mistakes because you're doing things for the first time. What gets you through those mistakes is self-compassionately saying, of course I'm going to make mistakes, I'm doing it for the first time. So I say cake, you might take 3 or 4 months just to build the skill of cake to apply to those feelings.
2 thoughts come to mind here. One is the saying that it is perfect, it's perfectly normal in unnormal circumstances to make an abnormal decision. I can't remember what it is now, but there's a good saying there. And also Churchill's definition of failure was all about going, definition of success was all about going from one failure to the next. I used to hate it, but I love it now. If I'm failing, they say if you're not failing, you're not growing.
Exactly. And it was to go from one failure to the next without a loss of enthusiasm, wasn't it?
That's right. Yes.
It's perfect.
Yes.
And that's exactly right, because actually that's what growth is. And the thing about the brain is it's got both systems. It's got a safety system to keep us alive in dangerous situations, and it's got a growth system to seek new lands and develop.
But am I right in saying, though, in all of us, though, depending on where our focus is and what we feed and what we keep dumbing down, because I think we do dumb down, like our conscience even, we can keep dumbing it down to the point that it stops firing in. Am I right in saying that all of us have different levels of emotional and cognitive interaction depending on what we focus on?
Absolutely, and also because we're living in a neurally plastic brain which changes around us. So the circuits that fire the most often, they get thicker insulation, they fire more quickly, they communicate more quickly. So if we keep withdrawing into safety and responding to anxiety, those circuits get stronger. And if we open out and go with cake and curiosity and empathy, those circuits get stronger. And it literally, we can change our brains from the inside out with the choice of thought and feeling we allow to run. We can't stop those automatic thoughts, but we can change our relationship with them.
Okay, so every day we wake up and our brains fire off again, and if we don't interrupt, then we will basically end up just thinking and believing what we believed yesterday. So let's have a scenario: a child very anxious about going back to school, student, let's say 13, 14. What kind of thing could they do in the morning to, as their brain refreshes, to actually give them better outcomes through the day?
So one of the things I talk to all the young people and parents I work with is to build the best version of yourself in your day, every day, is we talk about the 12 rocks of well-being. So these are the activities and habits that we all need to take part in every day to build the best version, for the brain to build the best version of the mind. So the brain's a projector, the mind is the image produced by that projector. So therefore there are these 12 habits, and that's where I get kids to start.
Fantastic. Andrew, is it okay? I'd love to invite you back for another programme, because I think we'd like to know a little bit more about these 12 habits. So it would be delightful if you'd be happy to come back. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining me today. It's just been wonderful to hear you share your wisdom. And Action for Potential, if you're looking for anybody to come in and, I don't know, just help in the pandemic, just not just the pandemic of COVID, but this pandemic of anxiety. And not all anxiety is bad, so we need to normalise some of it. And I think we're going to have you back to hear more. Andrew has a lot to say about how we can normalise. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And just keep positive. Keep a positive thought and a positive mindset. Have a great week or time between programmes. See you soon.